Are you nervous about rambling, freezing, or fumbling during investor meetings? Because look, I've been there until I realized how much better I could be. And through my experience, I used a single framework that boosted my own results, raising $16 million and helping other founders raise over $250 million as well. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to organize your answers, set up a framework to answer better so that you can impress investors on the spot. But before we do that, I just want to show you an example so you don't make the same mistake. So let's say that an investor asks you, how is your product a 10x improvement? Here is where most of the bad founders and the founders who fail to fundraise would do it. Well, we have this AI feature and machine learning algorithms, and compared to Salesforce, we're better because we have some automation. And then there's also HubSpot, but we're different because of our API introductions, and our dashboards has some real-time analytics. And we use natural language processing, which is about 50% faster than everyone else. Well, actually, no, it depends on the data set. But generally speaking, we're much more efficient, and our users just really love the UI UX, so that's why they're going to join us. You probably listen to that, and you were probably thinking back to yourself and saying, you know what? I've done the same thing before. I've answered in a similar way. If you've ever answered an investor question like this, then this video is exactly for you. And I'm going to teach you the exact framework that I use with the founders I with to completely change their fundraise, to make sure that investors feel excited about them, but then more importantly, that you're confident when you're going into these investor meetings and you know exactly how to answer it in the right way. But first, have you ever rambled like this in front of investors? Because look, I definitely have. And if you have any other questions around this, or you're confused about or anything else in help with in fundraising, just put it down in the comments below, and I will happily answer any questions you have or help you or create another video that's specific for you. But look, back to this video. Here's what happens when you answer investor questions poorly. Let's actually break down what just went wrong in that example, okay? So first, I started talking before I actually knew what I was going to say. So I was verbalizing my thoughts in real time, hoping I'd figure out my point somewhere along the way. And what happened there is it was very disjointed. It didn't really go anywhere. There was no real kind of sense of what I was trying to answer. Second, and because of that, I threw everything at the wall, whether it was features, competitors, technical details, and there was no real structure or clear message. And because of those two, the investor now has to do your job. Like, think back to how you were listening to that in answer. They're going to have to listen to all of that rambling. They're going to have to untangle it. They're going to figure out actually what you're claiming, and then somehow evaluate if it makes sense and if it's a good answer to them. And here's the brutal truth. Your ability to raise funding will be determined by the quality of your answers to investors' questions and making sure that they don't have to do the work. And when you don't have a framework to how answering questions and you just wing it and you just take it as it comes, you're going to answer in that example. And as someone who's been on both sides of the table, as someone as a VC, but then also raised for myself, I can tell you that investors make decisions based on how clearly and confidently you communicate and fundamentally how you answer those questions. And when you ramble, you just don't sound thoughtful. You sound unprepared. And unprepared founders don't get checks because investors just don't think you're prepared for anything. They don't really believe that you actually know what you're going to do and you're going to solve it. So we need to make sure that we're structured and prepared in how we answer investor questions way before we start the funding round. And this framework will allow you to do that for any other questions you ever get. So here's what you need to do instead. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to organize before you actually verbalize what you're doing. So before you open your mouth, you want to, this is why you want to prep answers before, and you want to use something which I call is the AAA framework. This is the same framework that works in high stakes communication, because fundraising is high stakes communication, and it's the exact framework for how you should be thinking about answering a lot of investor questions. So when you're thinking about doing an investor question, if you've never had it before, sit yourself up, think about the 3A's, then answer, or in the prep work, you should be doing this before and having them ready for you, okay? So the first one is answer. You want to answer the question directly. You then want to add the details in that matter. And then you want to acknowledge by closing the loop. Let me show you how this works with real investor questions. Let's take that same question. How is your product a 10x improvement? So the wrong way is what we already saw, right? So, you're talking about competitors and then HubSpot and then your 50% and then your UI, UX. It's just rambling. It doesn't make investors really understand what you're saying, and it just makes them confused. But the right way, using AAA, is first, if we haven't prepared before and you still can just get yourself ready for it, you want to pause for 2 to 3 seconds. This shows that I'm actually thinking about my answer instead of just word vomiting, and it means you won't ramble as much. Then you want to answer. So our AI reduces manual data entry time by 95%. That's it. Just one sentence. A clear claim. Now the investor knows exactly what we're talking about and what you're trying to answer. The second thing on the 3A framework is you want to add details. So here's how. Our pilot customer at TechCorp used to spend 8 hours every week manually entering leads from their website forms into Salesforce. With our AI, that same process now takes 24 minutes. So that's not just faster, it actually freed up their sales team to actually sell instead of doing data entry. And then the last one which you want to do, which is the third, which is acknowledge. And that's acknowledging the answer that you gave and acknowledging their question. So how you do that is you say, so when I say we're in 10x improvement, I mean we literally give sales teams 95% of their time back to focus on other revenue generating activities, which is the biggest bottleneck for our customers right now. So can you see the difference? Within reason, same information, but now it's structured, clear, and memorable, and much shorter, so you can get through a lot more stuff, and investors really feel clear what you're saying, and they can then start to push towards other questions they have about all of this stuff. And then you just want to do the 3A framework again. Let's use another example, something like a GTM strategy. Let's try that question. What is your go-to-market strategy? So the wrong way. Well, we're going to do content marketing and then social media, and then we're targeting SMBs as well, I think. And then we'll use paid ads on LinkedIn and Google, but we haven't really tested it yet, but we think it's going to be about 12%. Plus we're building partnerships and maybe doing some events. And we're thinking about both inbound and outbound, but really kind of maybe thinking inbound will be the right. And our ICP is really anyone who needs our solution. I heard that answer so much in a similar vein when I asked these types of questions as a VC. And all I'd ever think to this answer is, what's the strategy here? I have no idea. And that's because founders were word vomiting. They didn't take a step back, use the AAA framework, and answer in the best way. So if we were to use the AAA, I would do something like this. I would pause, think about what I'm going to say. I would then answer the question. We're focusing exclusively on mid-market SaaS companies through direct sales. We then add in some details to make sure that we're talking about. Here's why. These companies have 50 to 500 employees. They're growing fast, but they still have manual processes, and they have a budget to pay for solutions. So our average deal size is about 50K annually. And we're building a team of 3 reps who will do outbound to VPs of sales at these companies using a combination of LinkedIn, outreach, and cold. We've already validated this works because our pilot program generated 12 qualified meetings in the first month. And with the sales of that, we'd really be able to scale this in a much better way. And the last one you want to acknowledge. So our entire go-to-market strategy is around this one focus segment where we know we can win and get to the level and size of revenue that we need to really become big. See how clear that is? And the thing is, this can work for pretty much every single question, bar a few. You can think of what questions have I had before that I can then prepare for myself so that when I have a meeting with an investor, I'm answering in the best way. But this is why the AAA framework is so powerful for investor conversations, because first you're answering the question immediately. So investors don't have to wait and wonder what the point is and try and understand what it is. You then provide them with just enough detail to be credible without overwhelming them, for them to then potentially ask you more questions, but showing you've thought through what you're doing and they understand. If they've had to answer the question, you've given more detail. And then thirdly, with acknowledge, you're closing the loop so that they know you're done talking and you're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. No awkward trailing off, no rambling, because you know you need to acknowledge back to that. But here's the secret sauce. When you structure your answer this way, you sound like you know these questions inside out. You know your business inside out. And founders who have thought about this stuff are always the ones who get funded, because there is an inherent level of trust from investors that you're going to be able to be successful. Now, a few advanced tips. First one, if you have multiple points, just number them. You know, there are 3 reasons why we're 10x better. First, second, third. This just makes sound you even more prepared, and then you can knock them out as you need to. Secondly, in pitch meetings, if you start to panic and are worried you're going to start to ramble, always just start with the answer. Take a pause, think about what the answer is, give the answer, and then don't dive into details unless they ask. So you say, our AI reduces data entry time by 95%. Would you like me to explain how? And they can start asking questions and you can feel a bit more confident, or gives you a few more seconds to get yourself back into it and understand which stories or data you're going to use. And if you don't know something, just use the framework anyway. I don't have the exact number with me, but here's what I can tell you. I'll follow up with the specific data after this meeting, etc., etc. So now you've learned the framework and the AAA framework of how to do it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to practice. So go to ChatGPT or think about what questions you've had if you had investor questions before. Think of what the most common investor questions are that you've had. Then I just want you to practice by actually writing down the AAA framework. Okay, so answer, add, acknowledge, and write out how you'd answer that. Your full answer should be 30 to 60 seconds max. And then you just want to practice these until the framework becomes automatic. Because remember, investors are looking for founders who can think clearly under pressure. And when you organize before you verbalize, you demonstrate exactly that. You make it amazingly easy for them to really understand you. And the AAA framework works whether you're pitching VCs, talking to customers, presenting to your board, hiring. So it's not just about fundraising. Mastering this and you'll sound like the CEO investors want to back. But the thing is, this is great and all, but doesn't matter if you can't meet investors. Because, you'll never get the meeting. You'll never get investment if you can't meet anyone. So what I want you to do is I want you to check out this next video where I'll go through the system on how to build an investor network that gets you 50 plus investor meetings by the time you need to fundraise. Click here.